like and subscribe. Beyond Antarctica. Chapter 12. As the walls inside the newly accessed structure began to illuminate, John paused to address his team. The walls are lighting up, just like in the other structures. This room is huge, he observed, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. He commanded, "Hold up, people. Gear up first. Anyone who wishes to join this expedition, be ready to move out in 5 minutes." John removed his backpack, rifled through it, and pulled out a flask. After taking a significant swig, he tucked it back inside. Kim, watching the exchange with concern, gave him a disapproving look, then walked over and whispered, "You okay enough to do this, Dad?" He mumbled in response, "I'm always okay, love. You have your medicine for the pain. I have mine." Offering her a wry smile, he pushed past her, rallying the crew with a shout, "Double time, people." As Todd and Bick approached, John surveyed the group. Kim looked over, hesitant. "I'm not going. I'm just keeping you company, Dad." John quickly countered, "Yeah, you're going. We might need you." Bick chimed in, "I think Tony is coming too. He was loading the shotgun." John then advised the group, "Take extra water and a small snack, people. We might be in there a while. This place is huge." He motioned for everyone to double-check their packs. Tony joined them, offering John a hand up. John leaned over to whisper something to Tony, who then slung John's pack over his shoulder. Taking the shotgun from Tony, John declared, "I send no man where I'm not willing to go first," and confidently took the lead with Tony right behind him. The group followed him into the structure. The room they entered was vast and empty, its walls glowing green, illuminated by 2 massive symbols above large archways that led in 2 different directions. John decided, "We go to the right. Follow me." As they moved, the pathway opened into what seemed to be an endless room filled with countless drawers embedded in the walls, each lit with icons. "What seems to be millions," Kim remarked as she tried to take in the overwhelming sight. John noted, "With the size of this place, it's hard to say what these are." Bick, curious, rubbed his hand against one of the panels on the wall. Instantly, a 2-foot by 2-foot drawer extended out with a steaming hiss, revealing a jar inside. John, peering closely at the strange symbols on the jar's front, gestured for Kim's attention. "Kim, look at these symbols," he said. John, eager for more insights, stepped aside to let Kim examine the symbols more closely. "Dad, I'm a doctor, for crying out loud. I don't know why you think I can read this stuff," Kim protested, her frustration clear. John replied with a grin, "I know you can't read it, hon, but you have some form of higher education. Unlike the rest of us, maybe you will have a clue." Kim grunted in response, but leaned in to inspect the symbols. To her surprise, they were simple pictographs, a tree seedling, a small tree, and a large tree. Mirroring Bick's earlier actions, John opened another panel nearby. It, too, contained a similar jar, but with a slight variation in the pictographs. "It's not really the same," Kim observed, pointing at the last pictograph in the top corner. Bick, picking up the jar, noted, "These are seeds." As John opened more drawers, each revealing more jars with seeds, he speculated aloud, "I think this might be a seed bank of some kind." He glanced around at the vastness of the room filled with countless drawers, maybe to save what life they could, or to take it with them to start anew. Kim, closing the drawers, said thoughtfully, "Or it's an ark." Her statement captured everyone's attention as she pointed to a circular-style rampway leading downward, where a crown icon flashed invitingly at the base. As they descended further, the rampway beneath their feet glowed with a soft golden light, creating an ethereal path that led them into an expansive room distinctly different from the others. Unlike the uniform green glow of the previous rooms, this one was bathed in a golden hue that cast a warm light on their faces. As the group stepped fully into the room, a holographic display activated, revealing what appeared to be an aerial view of the ship in its prime, majestically positioned before the city. The image was so clear and detailed that it seemed almost as if they were looking out from a high vantage point above the city itself. John, captivated by the grandeur displayed before him, approached the hologram and, in a moment of awe, reached out to touch it. As his hand made contact, the hologram flickered unexpectedly and switched to a different display, a cascade of unfamiliar symbols accompanied by a deep, resonant voice that seemed to emerge from the very walls around them. The sudden change startled John into a defensive stance, and he instinctively raised his shotgun, sweeping it around the room. Kim quickly intervened. "Dad, I think it's an automated response or some form of AI." Realizing the truth in Kim's words, John slowly lowered his weapon, his eyes fixed on the holographic display, trying to decode the message being presented to them. As an unfamiliar language reverberated in the background, Todd pointed out a section of the holographic display showing the ship. He then pointed out a blinking red section. "See that blinking? I think it's highlighting the damaged part of the ship." John leaned in closer, intrigued, and tapped the display. Instantly, it zoomed in, showing multiple damaged sections, and a warning sequence began, repeating itself with a buzz. Bick listened closely. "That sounds like a warning alarm. Notice the pattern. Message, buzz, repeat." Curious, John tapped the display again, and the floor beneath them illuminated in sections, lighting up a path. "This seems to be guiding us out of the ship," Kim remarked, noticing how it retraced their steps back out. John asked the group, "What do these icons here look like to you?" as he stepped aside, giving all a better view. Todd studied a yellow icon with arrows pointing in all directions, the front arrow blinking red upon John's tap of the red blinking arrow. The initial holographic display vanished, replaced by an image of dirt zoomed in. Tapping another arrow which was not blinking shifted the view to the rear, revealing the celeb mariner. These must be external camera views, John realized, amazed. Speculatively touching a small circle icon at the top, the ship vibrated slightly under their feet. An alarm sounded, and the repetitive message began anew, its urgency unchanged. Kim cautioned her father, "Maybe we shouldn't just press things randomly." Todd, noticing the purple icon that fluctuated in brightness, pointed out, "It seems to be sending streaks towards the front of the ship." Intrigued, he tapped it, and the display shifted to show the interior of the ship, open drawers, damaged sections, and a blinking purple icon at the center. John reached up and pressed the icon. The noise ceased. The verbal message in the background altered to a different one, still on loop, and still unintelligible yet distinctly changed. Panels in the walls suddenly slid open and several small droids emerged. These droids briefly stood on balled-up legs before rolling past the group. One paused, turned to them, and emitted a beam of light that scanned each person. John instinctively raised his shotgun, but Tony quickly intervened, grabbing the barrel and lowering it. "I think it's just a repair droid," Tony suggested. "Have patience. Let's see what it will do next." The droid reformed into a ball and rolled away. Shortly after, the holographic display once again began blinking red. Alarms blared, and the familiar warning message resumed as the droids retreated back to their compartments. "That was strange," Tony remarked, puzzled. "I think they were maintenance droids, but the damage here might be too extensive for them to handle," Todd speculated. John, curious about another aspect of the display, pointed out a large purple icon that was neither blinking nor highlighted. He pressed it, and suddenly the room fell silent except for the soft hiss of the display changing. A large golden crown above a crystal skull materialized in the hologram. Simultaneously, a sliding door opened, and a towering android about 15 feet tall stepped into the room. It adopted an aggressive posture. Tension rose quickly as it began to speak in an unfamiliar language. John instinctively pulled Kim behind him. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning shot from the android's eyes, striking Bick and knocking him to the ground. Todd and Tony quickly helped him up as John declared, "Time to leave." As the android prepared for another attack, it turned its gaze toward John. He pushed Kim into the hallway and dove to avoid a second bolt that scorched the floor where he had just stood. "Everyone, with me," he shouted, leading the group into the hallway. Turning at the corner, he knelt, raised his shotgun, and fired repeatedly at the android's head. The shots deflected harmlessly until one slug penetrated, sparking violently. The android twisted and crashed to the ground. As they gathered around the downed machine, Kim remarked, "That was close." Dad, I told you we shouldn't just push buttons randomly. Their brief moment of relief was interrupted as panels opened again and several small droids appeared and began to repair the larger android. Todd points out, "This doesn't look good." Bick, still recovering, agreed. "That was like a taser on steroids. We should go." Just then, another large hiss echoed through the hallway as a second android appeared and started advancing toward them. "Run! Get to the exit now!" John commanded, leading the group as they sprinted toward safety. As they rushed out of the ship, the group found themselves panting and disoriented from the sudden burst of activity. The exit brought them into the harsh sunlight, which felt almost blinding after the dim, artificial light inside the ship. John, leading the group, didn't pause. "Keep moving to the base camp," he ordered, glancing back to make sure everyone was following. Behind him, Kim helped support Bick, who was still shaky from the shock he had endured. Tony, carrying the medical bag, stayed close to them, ready to assist. As they neared the base camp, the familiar faces of the crew who had stayed behind greeted them. "What happened in there?" asked one of the crew members as they approached. John, catching his breath, waved the question away for the moment. "Later," he managed to say, his focus on ensuring everyone was safe. Once at the base camp, he directed the group towards the tent. "Let's get everyone checked out first. We'll debrief after everyone is settled and safe." Inside the tent, Kim and Tony quickly set about tending to Bick and checking everyone else for injuries. John, though insisting he was fine, was persuaded by Kim to sit down for a quick examination. Once the immediate medical assessments were done and everyone was found to be relatively unharmed, the crew gathered around a makeshift table set up outside the tent. With the adrenaline fading, the gravity of their discovery and the recent danger began to sink in. John cleared his throat, drawing the group's attention. "We encountered something extraordinary. That ship, or whatever it is, isn't just an old wreck. It's something far more advanced." Kim added, "The technology we saw, the holograms, the droids, it's unlike anything we've come across before, and those androids were programmed to protect it, possibly at all costs." Bick, now more composed, chimed in. "The implications of what we've found could be massive, but we also need to be incredibly careful." John nodded. "For now, we'll increase our security measures and keep a constant watch. We need to understand more before we can decide our next move. Let's gather all the data and review the footage." As the sun began to set over the ocean, casting long shadows on the sand. "Tomorrow," John concluded, "we regroup with a plan. For tonight, let's rest and keep our eyes open. We're not alone out here, and now we know it." It starts to rain and picks up throughout the night. As the relentless rain battered the beach, the storm transformed the landscape into a quagmire. By morning, the expedition's base camp was barely recognizable, its equipment and temporary structures either buried or strewn about by the formidable winds and water. The entrance to the ship, painstakingly cleared just the day before, was once again sealed under layers of thick, heavy mud. Tony surveyed the damage with a grim expression. "It'll take weeks to clear this out, sir," he reported to John. "This is a huge mess. The beach is covered in this mud-like substance. It's almost impossible to even move out here." John, observing the extent of the damage, made the decision to regroup. "Everyone, back to the boat for now," he commanded, his voice carrying over the howl of the storm. The crew, soaked and disheartened, complied, trudging through the thick mud that stuck to their boots. As days turned into a week, the rain showed no sign of relenting, and the mud continued to flow, gradually covering the ship's deck in a thick, wet blanket. Each day, the crew would watch from the celeb mariner as their chance of resuming the exploration seemed to slip further away. Inside the ship's common area, John convened a meeting with his senior crew members to ponder their next move. The atmosphere was tense. The relentless rain drumming in the background was a constant reminder of their situation. "We're stuck," John admitted, looking around at the faces of his crew. "We can't dig out that entrance every time it rains. It's not sustainable. We need a new strategy." Bick suggested, "What if we try to stabilize the hillside? Maybe we can divert the water flow, channel it away from the site." Kim, who had been silent up to this point, chimed in. "It's not just about the water. The mudslide risk has increased with every day of rain. We might be putting ourselves at risk if we continue to work under these conditions." Tony nodded in agreement. "She's right. We've been lucky so far, but luck doesn't last forever. Maybe it's time to consider pulling out and coming back with a more solid plan." John listened to each point, weighing their words carefully. Finally, he spoke. "Let's take a step back and assess. We'll monitor the weather in the hillside over the next few days. If conditions don't improve, we'll pull out and regroup. We can't risk lives for this." As they dispersed, the sound of rain against the metal hull continued unabated, a stark reminder of the challenges they faced not just from the depths of the ocean or the mysteries of an ancient ship, but from the very earth and sky of this mysterious planet they were striving to understand. This is not goodbye, nor the end. Until the story continues, my friends. B.N.Rocker.